Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling Bitcoin from the ground up.
Wow.
You've provided us with some really great source material, Satoshi Nakamoto's original white paper, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and also that incredibly detailed Wikipedia page on Bitcoin.
Yeah, they're a good combination. You've got the blueprint, that 2008 paper, which was just, well, revolutionary.
Definitely.
And then the Wikipedia entry, which, tracks everything since then, the tech, the history, its impact, even hitting that $100,000 mark late last year.
So our goal here is really to cut through the noise, understand how it works deep down, and maybe figure out why it's become such a huge deal.
Exactly. Extracting the core ideas.
Okay. Let's get right to it then. The white paper kicks off by identifying a really fundamental problem with electronic money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It talks about making transactions online without needing to trust a third party, like a bank.
Yeah.
And specifically, this issue of stopping double spending.
Yes, that's the absolute crux of it.
Why was solving that particular problem, double spending, so critical?
Well, think about digital files. You can copy them infinitely, right? Music, documents, whatever.
Sure.
So if you create digital money, how do you stop someone from just copying it and spending it over and over again? Like counterfeiting, but, digital.
Ah, okay. So you need digital scarcity.
Precisely. You need to make sure that when you spend your digital coin, it's actually gone from you, just like handing over a physical coin. Bitcoin's genius was figuring out how to do that without a central bank or company keeping track of every single transaction.
And the first piece of that puzzle, according to the paper, was this concept of a timestamp server. Sounds a bit technical.
It does, but the core idea is actually quite neat. You take a bunch of transactions waiting to be confirmed, a block of them.
Okay.
You then create a unique digital fingerprint of that entire block. That's called a hash.
Right, a hash, like a summary code.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
A unique identifier. And then critically, you publish this hash widely. The paper suggested things like, a newspaper or Usenet posts, make it public.
So publishing the hash proves that those specific transactions existed at that specific time, almost like getting it notarized.
Exactly, like a digital notary, that's a good way to put it. Because of how hashing works, if you changed even one tiny detail in any of those transactions later,
The hash would change completely.
totally different hash. So that public hash is solid proof. But here's the really clever part. Each new timestamp, each new hash, also includes the hash of the previous block's timestamp.
Ah, so they link together, creating a chain.
Precisely. You're building a chain of these time-stamped blocks. Each new block confirms the one before it, making the history stronger and stronger over time. It allows for this ordered sequence of events without any central authority saying, this happened then. It's fundamental.
Okay, so it's like stacking bricks, and each new brick locks the previous ones in place. Tampering gets harder the longer the chain gets.
You got it. And this chain relies on something the paper calls proof of work. This is where it gets really core to Bitcoin's security.
Proof of work. We hear that term all the time. What's the essence of it?
Okay, so in Bitcoin's timestamp network, proof of work basically means making computers do hard work. We call these computers miners.
Right.
They have to find a specific number called a nonce. It's basically like guessing numbers over and over again, incredibly quickly.
Guessing. What are they trying to achieve by guessing?
They combine this nonce with all the data in the block of transactions they've assembled, and they run it through that hashing process we mentioned. They keep trying different nonces until they find one that produces a hash with a very specific characteristic.
Which is?
Usually, it needs to start with a certain number of zeros. It has to be below a certain target value set by the network.
So it's like a digital lottery, but one where you have to do intense computation to even buy a ticket, and finding the winning number proves you did the work.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. Finding that specific nonce and the resulting hash is the proof that a significant amount of computational effort, CPU time, electricity has been spent.
And once that work is done, the block is considered valid.
Yes, and crucially, it becomes very difficult to change. To alter that block, someone would have to redo all that computational work, plus all the work done for every single block added after it in the chain.
Wow. Okay, so the chain makes it exponentially harder to tamper with older transactions. It's not just about ordering, it's about security.
Absolutely. The security comes from the accumulated proof of work. And this mechanism also cleverly solves another problem in a decentralized system. How do you reach consensus? How does everyone agree on the state of things?
Right, without a central boss saying, this is the official version.
Exactly. The white paper points out that just giving one vote per IP address is easily gameable.
People could just use lots of IP addresses.
Right. So proof of work provides a different system. Basically, one CPU, one vote. Or rather, voting power is proportional to computational power. The longest chain, the one with the most accumulated proof of work, is accepted by a network as the valid official history.
Assuming most of the computing power is controlled by honest participants, not attackers.
That's the key assumption, yes. An attacker would need to redo the proof of work for the block they want to change and all the blocks after it, and then somehow outpace the ongoing work of the entire honest network. The probability of that succeeding shrinks incredibly fast as the chain grows.
Got it. So proof of work provides ordering, security, and consensus. Pretty elegant, actually.
It really is.
Now, how does the information itself, the new transactions in these newly mined blocks, actually travel across this distributed network? Sounds like it could be messy.
It's designed to be pretty fault tolerant, actually. When you make a new transaction, you just broadcast it out to the nodes you're connected to.
It doesn't have to reach everyone instantly.
No, not at all. As long as it reaches a good number of nodes, it'll propagate through the network pretty quickly and likely get picked up by a miner to be included in the next block.
Okay.
And for blocks themselves, if a node happens to miss a block broadcast for some reason, maybe it was offline briefly, it's not a disaster, when it receives the next block, it'll see there's a gap in the chain.
And it can just ask its neighbors for the missing one.
Exactly. It just requests the missing block from other nodes it's connected to. The system is built to handle these kinds of temporary message drops.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems robust. So we've talked about the work involved in mining. But why would anyone dedicate all this computing power and electricity? What's the motivation?
The incentive mechanism. That's absolutely crucial. The white paper lays this out clearly.
Yeah.
The very first transaction in every single new block is a special one. It's called the Coinbase transaction.
Coinbase. Like the company.
No, same name, but this is the original term from the white paper. This Coinbase transaction creates brand new Bitcoin out of thin air and awards it directly to the miner who successfully found the proof of work for that block.
So that's the reward for doing all that computational work.
That's the primary reward, yes. It serves two critical purposes. First, it provides a powerful financial incentive for people to run the mining hardware, which secures the network and processes transactions.
And second,
It's how new Bitcoin is initially distributed into the ecosystem. Since there's no central bank just printing money, this mining process is the only way Bitcoins are created.
the paper compares it to gold mining, right? Expending resources to get new gold.
Exactly. Instead of digging in the ground, miners expend computational resources, CPU cycles, and electricity. And besides creating new coins, this whole process validates transactions and maintains that secure blockchain we discussed.
So miners bundle transactions, solve the proof of work puzzle,
Find that nonce that produces a hash below the network's difficulty target.
and get rewarded with new Bitcoin. And transaction fees too, right?
Yes, they also collect any fees attached to the transactions they include in their block. Initially, the block reward was the main incentive, but fees are becoming increasingly important.
You mentioned the difficulty target. Does that change?
It does. The network automatically adjusts the difficulty of finding that proof of work hash roughly every 2 weeks, every 2016 blocks to be precise.
Why adjust it?
To keep the average time between new blocks steady at around 10 minutes. If lots of new miners join and the total network computing power goes up, blocks would start getting found faster than 10 minutes. So the difficulty increases to compensate.
And if miners leave?
The difficulty decreases, making it easier so block times stay around that 10-minute average. It's a self-regulating system.
Clever.
Mm-hmm.
And this block reward the new Bitcoin created, that amount changes too, doesn't it? The halving.
Yes, absolutely. That's baked into the protocol. Approximately every 4 years, or every 210,000 blocks, the block reward gets cut in half.
So it started higher and keeps decreasing.
Exactly. It started at 50 BTC per block, then went to 25, then 12.5, 6.25. The most recent halving was in April 2024, which reduced the reward to 3.125 BTC per block.
And this continues until.
Until the total supply reaches its hard cap of 21 million Bitcoin, which is estimated to happen sometime around the year 2140.
Wow. So there's a finite supply.
Absolutely finite and predictable. After the block rewards eventually cease, miners will be compensated solely by transaction fees. This program's scarcity is a really core feature of Bitcoin's economic model.
Okay, this brings us neatly back to the blockchain itself. We keep mentioning it. Let's really nail down what it is.
Okay. Fundamentally, the blockchain is a public ledger. Think of it as a giant shared accounting book, that records every single Bitcoin transaction ever made.
Public, meaning anyone can look at it.
Yes, anyone can download it and view the history. And it's distributed, meaning thousands of computers nodes all over the world maintain their own identical copy of this ledger.
So no single person or company controls the official record.
Precisely. That's the decentralization aspect.
Yeah.
Every transaction added to it is cryptographically signed and verified by the network, making it extremely hard to cheat the system, like spending Bitcoin you don't own.
And new blocks containing verified transactions and the proof of work are added to the end of this chain roughly every 10 minutes, updating everyone's copy.
That's the process. So where do the actual Bitcoins live? It's not like a file on your computer, right?
Yeah, good question. It's not like a bank account balance either, is it?
Not exactly. Bitcoins exist as records on the blockchain called unspent transaction outputs, or UTXOs.
UTXOs.
Think of them like individual digital coins or tokens of varying amounts, all recorded in the public ledger. When you own Bitcoin, what you really own is the secret key needed to unlock and spend specific UTXOs associated with your Bitcoin address.
So when I send Bitcoin, I'm essentially taking some of my UTXOs.
Unlocking them with your private key and creating new UTXOs assigned to the recipient's address, and maybe some smaller UTXO back to yourself as change.
Okay, that makes more sense than just a balance number.
Yeah.
And ownership is tied to these addresses. What are they?
A Bitcoin address is derived from a public key, which itself is derived from your secret private key. The address is what you share with people so they can send you Bitcoin.
Like an email address for money.
Kind of, yeah. But crucially, generating an address involves creating that private key first. That's the secret part you never share. Then you compute the public key, and from that, the address.
And you can't figure out the private key just by looking at the address or public key.
Computationally infeasible. That's the magic of public key cryptography. You use your secret private key to digitally sign transactions, proving you own the funds, and everyone else can verify that signature using your public key without ever knowing your secret.
So the chain links the blocks, proof of work secures them, and cryptography handles the ownership and spending via keys and addresses.
You've basically just summarized the core mechanics. And remember, changing anything in the past requires redoing all that proof of work and convincing the network, which needs majority control of the hash rate.
Hash rate being the total computing power mining Bitcoin.
Exactly. The more hash rate, the more secure the network generally is against that kind of attack. And if there's ever a temporary disagreement, like two miners finding a block at almost the same time,
the network follows the chain that ends up getting longer first, the one with more proof of work.
that's the rule. The longest chain wins.
Okay, now this system, while groundbreaking, didn't just spring from nowhere. The Wikipedia source mentioned Bitcoin built on earlier ideas.
Oh, absolutely. It stands on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. There were many previous attempts at creating digital cash.
Like what?
Well, back in the 80s, David Chaum developed eCash, which was quite innovative but centralized. Then in the 90s, you had Adam Back's Hashcash.
Hashcash.
Yeah.
Was that trying to be money?
Not directly. It
Uh-huh.
used a proof-of-work concept primarily to combat email spam, making it computationally expensive to send bulk emails. But the proof-of-work idea was influential.
Okay.
And then in 1998, you had two really interesting proposals, Waydai's B-Money and Nick Szabo's Bid Gold. Both explored ideas of decentralized digital currency using cryptographic puzzles.
So people were thinking along these lines already.
Definitely. And Hal Finney, who was actually the first person other than Satoshi to run the Bitcoin software, had created his own system called Reusable Proof of Work, RPOW, in 2004. Even the NSA published a paper in '96 about anonymous electronic cash systems.
Wow. So Satoshi managed to pull together these threads, decentralization, proof of work, public key crypto, and solve that double spending problem in a way others hadn't quite managed.
That seems to be the case, combining the elements in a novel and workable way. The Wikipedia entry also notes the timing of the Bitcoin.org domain registration.
Yeah. When was that?
It was registered in August 2008, shortly after a related patent application was filed by three individuals, Neil King, Vladimir Oxman, and Charles Bry.
Patent related to Bitcoin.
It covered networking and encryption tech, and apparently some text in the patent application was very similar to phrasing in the Bitcoin white paper, but all three have denied being Satoshi Nakamoto.
Which brings us to Satoshi himself.
Yeah.
Or herself. Or themselves. Still a complete mystery, right?
One of the biggest mysteries in tech just completely vanished. So much speculation over the years.
Who are some of the names thrown around?
Oh, loads. Early on, people looked at cryptographers involved in similar fields like Michael Clear or Vili Leydon Virta, even a Japanese mathematician, Shinichi Mochizuki. Later, there were attempts to link it to Ross Ulbricht of Silk Road Worm, but that was retracted.
And Nick Szabo, the Bitgold guy, he seems like a prime suspect to many.
He's probably the most frequently cited candidate, yeah. Similar ideas, writing style, but he's always denied it. Then there was that whole Newsweek saga trying to pin it on Dorian Nakamoto.
Right, I remember that. That seemed pretty shaky.
Very controversial, yeah. What seems clear is Satoshi was active in development and communication until about mid-2010, then gradually faded away, saying in 2011 they'd moved on to other things.
Incredible to create something so huge and just disappear. What about some early milestones? The pizza story.
Ah, yes, the legendary pizza transaction. May 2010. Laszlo Hanyecz paid 10,000 BTC for 2 pizzas.
10,000 Bitcoin. Wow. That puts the price swings in perspective.
Doesn't it just? But it wasn't all smooth sailing early on. There were bugs, like a major vulnerability exploited in 2010 that allowed someone to create billions of Bitcoins momentarily.
Whoa. Was that fixed?
Yes, quickly fixed.
Yeah.
And the erroneous transaction chain was erased. And there was even a blockchain split in 2013 because different software versions weren't compatible for a bit. Growing pains.
And as it grew, governments started noticing.
They had to. By 2013, FinCEN in the U.S. issued guidance, basically saying if you mine and sell Bitcoin, you're likely a money service business, subject to regulations. Germany recognized it as private money around the same time. Regulators were trying to figure out how to classify this new thing.
And the price history, as mentioned, has been volatile.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Wild swings, huge bull runs followed by sharp crashes, driven by adoption, speculation, regulation news, macroeconomics, you name it. Reaching $100,000 in late 2024 was obviously a huge milestone psychologically.
We saw companies starting to adopt it too over time.
Slowly at first, then more rapidly. Early adopters like WikiLeaks took donations. Then Overstock started accepting it. More recently, big names like MicroStrategy putting it on their balance sheet. Tesla briefly accepting it. PayPal integrating crypto. It signals growing mainstream interest, even if its use for everyday payments is still debated.
Which ties into that whole digital gold narrative, the store of value idea.
Exactly. That's become a dominant narrative. The fixed supply, the decentralization. Proponents argue it's a hedge against inflation, like a digital version of gold.
But there are criticisms too, right? Big ones.
Oh, definitely. And they're important. The energy consumption of proof-of-work mining is a huge environmental concern for many.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot.
There are constant accusations of it being a speculative bubble, potential for price manipulation, its use in illicit finance, although the transparency of the blockchain complicates that, and even weird things like people embedding potentially illegal data within blockchain transactions.
And the legality of mining itself varies wildly.
Hugely. Some countries have banned it, often citing energy use, like China. Others have restricted it or taxed it heavily. It's a real patchwork globally.
To cope with the difficulty, miners often pool resources, right?
Yes, mining pools are common. Individual miners contribute their hash power to a pool, and if the pool finds a block, the reward is shared proportionally. It smooths out the income instead of waiting potentially years to find a block on your own.
And finally, to actually use Bitcoin, you need a wallet.
Correct. A wallet doesn't store the Bitcoin itself, those are on the blockchain. It stores your private keys.
The secret codes needed to spend your UTXOs.
Exactly. Wallets come in different forms. You have full clients, which download the entire blockchain, very secure but resource intensive. Lightweight clients trust servers for blockchain data. Online or hot wallets are convenient but riskier.
And cold storage.
That's the most secure for holding larger amounts long term. It means keeping your private keys completely offline, often on specialized hardware devices, or even just written down on paper wallets. And most wallets use mnemonic phrases, those 12 or 24 words, as a backup to recover your keys if you lose your device.
Right, those seed phrases are super important to keep safe.
Absolutely critical. Lose your keys, lose your Bitcoin.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. It seems we've covered the core ideas. A decentralized peer-to-peer system for electronic cash.
Using a timestamp server and proof of work to prevent double spending and establish consensus.
Creating an immutable public ledger called the blockchain.
Incentivized through mining rewards and transaction fees with a fixed supply.
And managed through cryptographic keys and addresses stored in wallets. The lack of a central authority is key.
It's the defining feature and the source of both its strengths and many of the ongoing debates around it.
So, reflecting on all this, thinking about how Satoshi conceived this system back in 2008 and seeing what it's become, it makes you wonder, what do you think is the most significant long-term implication of a functional, trustless digital currency? Is it mainly about the tech itself? Is it an economic game changer? Or maybe something else entirely?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. Is it the technology, the economic model, the philosophical shift away from trusted third parties? Yeah, definitely something for people to think about further.